Good morning. So, the first thing we need to do before we start gardening, and I'm feeling so good thinking about this because it's so important, and I feel like a lot of us already know this deep down in our hearts, and it's the idea that we're all connected. And I know, like, that sounds spiritual or foo-foo, but the idea is that, like, all of the subtle forces in our life are all sort of connected together. So, like, a really relatable example is, like, water. So if we all drink out of the same drinking fountain, here's a morbid example. When I was I recently found out that the drinking fountain at my elementary school was contaminated with, I think it was arsenic. I used to really drink a lot of water out of there, and it tasted terrible. Anyways, maybe that explains the way I am or something. But now me and all of those people that went to that elementary school, maybe we have similar traits because we all have like some sort of minor arsenic poisoning. I don't know. We all share the ocean, so if the general quality of the ocean is bad, or if there's an area that's polluted, then the fish from that area are polluted, and so then we eat the fish that are polluted from that area that we polluted it, so that we're connected in that sense. But also it can be a positive thing. So if you have a birthday in your neighborhood, there's celebrations, and maybe the joyous noise gives joy and comfort to a neighborhood. Or maybe someone's playing loud music in the middle of the night and waking everyone up, so we're all connected in that sense. There's a lot of like ways that we are connected in one another, and I guess it's like action reaction, like our actions have a reaction in the environment, and in that sense we're connected. Everything we do, every decision we make affects everybody else for the rest of history, and maybe not as directly in many cases, but indirectly, definitely, for sure. Some people even take it as far as to say that water holds the vibration of like everything that's happened from the beginning of time or something like that, just by the alignment. I don't know, I kind of think of it as like if you can measure the position or energy states of water, maybe you could get information out or something. I don't know. So how does this relate to gardening? Well, there's a lot of factors in gardening. Water quality, soil, temperature, humidity, pest pressures, and even our own communities and our own gardens, decisions that people want to make about that space that may not be aligned with your own positions. In my case, many times I want to do like an organic thing, and then someone wants to do a not organic thing or something, and so that's another factor. So we're all connected. So how can we act in such a way that benefits us as a whole? I think that's the real question at the beginning of it, is like, I'm a good person, so I want to do good. What can I do that's good? And how can I do it? So I think, as far as I know, everyone has their own definition of the right thing to do, which is totally fine. Because I think it's all of us together doing our own best version of what we're supposed to do that makes the world good, you know? And it's not this like organized, intentional thing that we're all like following a protocol for. It's just like kind of what's in your heart, you know? And but then there's also really good tools for measuring, you know, what's good too. So I just, without getting too deep into it, I want to talk about science and the fact that science has a lot of really good tools for measuring what we want, reactions or actions that we want. For example, you know, if you want a nice cold drink, you put your water in a container and put it in the freezer. Our understanding of science helps make the freezer work, and electricity flow to the freezer, and then we get a nice cold drink out of the end. So we've used science, you know, to create something that benefits us. Farming and gardening is a version of science. We're taking seeds and fertilizer and soil and space and water, and we're making these things in food, something, and medicine, stuff that we can use to help our bodies and to survive and thrive and experience abundance too. So yeah, understanding that we're all connected is probably, I think, a really good starting point, because then you're going to come at it from a sense of doing the right thing and doing what's good for you. And by the way, doing the right thing and doing what's good for you, in my opinion, produces the most frequent and best pleasures. I think you can get more immediate and awesome pleasures by doing the wrong thing, but the most frequent and best, I think, is reserved for those who do the right thing. That's my opinion. So even though bad things happen to all of us, and we all have our own struggles, essentially, we still experience a lot of good in the world. And I also think that, like, society sort of goes through, this is getting really meta, but like general waves of like good and bad. So like, you know, the Dark Ages, everything kind of got shitty for a while with the plague and everything, and everyone dying, and people not learning and living very simple, hard lives. And then I think, you know, there's times like, and places, you know, it could be, you know, like America in the 1930s or something, or 20s, and the Industrial Revolution, and you could say that like Native Americans had a very nice society in certain places in the United States that were very like idyllic, and you know, the Aboriginals had that in Australia, and during different time periods, different places. The point I'm getting to is that people experience good and bad, no matter how good of a person you are. And but circling back around to gardening, I think it's definitely true that the decisions we make in our lives help determine the outcomes in our life. So, if you plant a sunflower seed, you're probably going to get a sunflower. If you do everything mostly right. But also, it's not that hard to get at least a small shitty sunflower. And even a small shitty sunflower is awesome, in my opinion. Even if I'm feeling lazy and I throw a couple sunflower seeds out there, man, do a little bit of work, and then a couple months later, I'm like, wow, I'm so happy I did that because I'm enjoying this beautiful sunflower. Anyways, just looking at the sunflower over there. Guess we can look at that real quick. See, I chopped its head off so it can grow more flowers. Anyways. So, yeah. We're all connected. Everything's connected. Action, reaction. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction according to the laws of physics. And so gardening is all about figuring out what actions in your environment create what reactions and trying to narrow down your actions so that you can get positive reactions from your environment. I think that's like kind of same with everything else in life. But gardening is sort of a microcosm of life, and I think it's very good for us, especially since it provides us with one of our most basic needs, which is food. Indirectly, it also provides us with clean water because gardening is a way to manage how water flows through our environment, especially if you consider it from a permaculture perspective. Which I do, but I don't know a lot about permaculture at this point, but I'm learning more. I guess I know a lot compared to the average person, but compared to like people who've been doing it for years, I think there's other people who can speak to the true heart of permaculture better than I can. However, I think I have a good amount of general knowledge in enough methods of gardening to be an effective guide, especially for beginners or people who are sort of in their first couple years of gardening. I think that's sort of my target audience. But yeah, anyways, so I wanted just to get down to the heart of the idea that we're all connected, and I think that if we want, we can have the intention of doing good in our garden. And with that intention, we sort of defeat some of the ideas that have surrounded in gardening, which I think are sort of toxic. And one of those ideas is that we're just doing it as this like aesthetic thing, and I think that motivation is sort of fear-based because we want others to think that we have a nice looking yard so that they can approve of us, and so that we won't suffer social consequences, and so that we will be accepted by our community. And I think that fear in making gardening choice decisions is part of the problem, and the reason why a lot of people turn towards the easy solutions of chemicals in their garden and fast-acting fertilizers and stuff that can be harmful, is because they're making the decision instead of doing what's good. They are acting out of fear and doing what they need to do in order to survive, and that is to have this aesthetic yard that serves a function before anything else of just being out of the way and being neat and easy to maintain. And I think that is gonna be a big consequence because, and I'll probably get into this more later, but if everybody has this like neat, chemical laden, easy to maintain landscape, and there's billions of people on the earth, then a lot of the land mass of Earth will be covered by these gardens, and they are right now. I think that I represent a sort of new perspective on how to manage gardens and land so that we can have sustainability and continue to have a functioning ecosystem, which we do right now, and I think we have many years left of a functioning ecosystem, by the way, before industrialization sort of ruins it. I don't know if it's as urgent as the current predictions are, but I still think it's something we can work on. And honestly, I think there's a lot more immediate benefits to consider besides just being a solution for the environment in general, and global warming and climate change and that sort of thing. I think there's immediate benefits to the health. I think there's immediate benefits to beauty in many ways, especially if you can get your perspective away from beauty being this sort of like standard that's projected onto you, and have beauty be something a little bit more natural. And I think that accepting natural environments as something that's beautiful is sort of a result of learning more about the different the sort of diversity of life that is in a natural environment that has the conditions for this diversity of life. And I think that part of what's missing in our daily lives is actually the nature that we've pushed away because we're scared of sort of the consequences of nature, which I think also is just sort of a result of general lack of understanding. So like, you know, we're afraid of mice, but the reality is that if there's a mouse in your yard, as long as it's not coming in your house and crawling on your actual food, then the mouse isn't really a problem, you know? So if you have, I mean, I'm not going to talk about pest control right now, but yeah, so I know this is a little bit longer winded, and I just, actually I got probably more to say. So we're all connected, and so we want to do the right thing, and so we have to make these decisions instead of out of fear. We need to be making decisions in the garden out of love. I think that's the big thing that we need to start. And to make decisions out of love, we need to consider being compassionate to the natural systems around us, and in order to develop that compassion, we need to be observant. And so this kind of gets to one of my other points, which I'll probably be talking about a lot later, which is that we need to actually do less in our lives. We're always trying to be productive, but I think it's kind of like running around. It's like setting up I gotta think of it again. It's like mincing up a bunch of garlic in a kitchen, and like you made a new recipe and it requires a bunch of garlic, and you're mincing and mincing and mincing and mincing, but you never think to use the blender that's right there, that's been there since before the recipe was started. And I think that's sort of an analogy for like natural systems, and like we're not really using the natural systems to their full benefit. I think I'll give an example of like the dams in the Pacific Northwest, like kind of where I'm from. They tell stories of, I think it's the White Salmon River, but don't quote me on that. It's one of the rivers in like northern Oregon or something like that, and it used to have so many salmon. They say there was a legend that you could walk across the backs of the salmon to cross the river when they were spawning, because there were so many salmon in the river, and you could just cast a net and get salmon for a year, and there's just so much. And then we put in these dams and we overfished them, and we overfished the oceans, and now we don't have that salmon, and all the people live right on those rivers, and they're buying salmon that was like caught out in the ocean. And it's like, why not just have the salmon come to you in like way bigger numbers than we have now, way more than enough to feed all the people we have now, but we have these dams to make a little bit of electricity. And it's not really a little bit, it's a lot, but like, we have other ways to do that now. So now they're taking out some of the dams, which I think is cool, and I think we're going to see a return of the salmon. And they actually are, in some cases, seeing already where they have taken out dams, salmon and native fish populations sort of restarting, and also native ecosystems surrounding those areas coming back into play. So I think that's one natural thing. Also, the beavers, they're reintroducing beavers into areas, and those dams are creating wetlands, and those wetlands are creating habitat and all sorts of ecological restoration, which is really cool, and has a lot of like environmental factors, and is doing a lot of stuff. Like, for example, they found out that damming areas is good because it creates these wetlands, but they don't want to go through building all the dams. So that's when they found out about beavers, and they're like, oh man, this rodent that we practically eliminated was doing all of this ecological work for free. It's the natural system. And I think when we observe nature, we can see these natural systems, and we can kind of realize that some of what we're doing is sort of just like counterproductive to our own benefit. And I think we really need to take a page out of the Native American book, or take a listen from their stories, because it was an oral tradition, right? And so we need to listen about the stories about before, when there was forests full of trees that all created food, and herbs growing everywhere, and fruit growing everywhere, and they made it that way, and they kept it that way for thousands of years. And there was huge herds of wild animals. They could just go and hunt as much as they needed, and they made all sorts of things out of the abundant fur and the abundant plants and the abundant food that they had everywhere growing. And especially in these like more like abundant areas, like sort of soil wise, I guess, more fertile areas of the United States and North America in general, I think they had so much. And compared to what we have nowadays, in terms of like basic needs, like to me that's the way I see like wealth and abundance, is basic needs. So like, you got your water, food, and I'm going off of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was sort of from the Native Americans too. He kind of took that idea and translated it. That's kind of another tangent, but he and all this stuff. Like, by the way, y'all, I don't really take on. This is like something about me. I don't, in the age of information, where everyone has access to a smartphone, libraries, all that stuff, I don't take on the responsibility of proving what I'm saying to you, because what I'm saying can be confirmed by a quick Google search. So if you ever have like a doubt about what I'm saying, just pause the video, go on to Google. You're already on a device. Go on to Google, type in, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Where did Maslow develop those ideas? Did they come from the Native Americans? And you can read all about that yourself, like I did. So now I'm just sharing I'm already doing you a service by concentrating this information down into like a more easily digestible thing. That's part of my purpose here. Anyways, so I hear Doug. Anyways, so yeah, so I think if we can realize that we're all connected, then we can realize our actions and decide that we want to do good. And in doing good, we're going to learn from each other of what's worked well in the past. I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. Don't just watch my videos, watch all the other gardening channels, all the other organic farmers and even non-organic farmers. I think I've learned a lot, even though I've always been like sort of from the beginning of my gardening journey focused on like soil microbes and all that stuff. But I feel like, or the organic path, but I've still learned a lot from conventional farmers. See, that's the important thing, and gardeners. So, you might have somebody who uses like for example, this lady, I'm pretty sure she used like Miracle-Gro for her soil, but then she had really good mulch. So then she had really good tomatoes. So then you're like, and of course I've seen lots of people with good mulch and organic fertilizer and they have really, really good tomatoes. But, yeah, so anyways, if we can realize that we are all connected, then we can do good and we can make the right decisions in our garden and we can decide to do what's good instead of just what society wants us to do. And that will have benefits in the long run. So I think like setting up systems like the Native Americans had, where their environment was sort of a permaculture food forest, and they used a lot of medicine, and they like cooked together and harvested together and hunted together. I think these are things that we need to do again. And I think we need more people involved in the growing of their own food. And I don't really like the word farming because it represents all of these practices that are just not really sustainable. Even though they are providing us food now, I think we need to do less farming and more gardening. But still do farming, because I think farming is important, and obviously it's the backbone. Like I eat rice and I eat beans and all of these things. To have them at the price that we have them, which is very affordable, we need farming techniques. And I think a lot of our economy and our population is supported by these large-scale agriculture. And you can do it organically. Obviously, there's organic products in the store that are being farmed organically. And yes, they're a little bit more because the cost of inputs is a little bit higher. But at first, overall, I think organic's cheaper than conventional, and that might be debatable to some, but you haven't seen what I've seen. And also just check out the Rodale Institute. They have pretty good numbers on there, because you actually end up getting more eventually with the organic methods, which is crazy that people believe that the opposite is true. But anyways, what I'm getting at is that we need to be making decisions based off, and I've been harping on this, we need to be making decisions based off of love and what is best for us and for our community and for our health and for our home, and what's sustainable, what's good for the earth and for everything. So instead of like, oh God, I need to plant grass because this dirt patch looks gross, because they just built this house and now I have this, and like what I'm gonna put a lawn here, you know, like what about a raised bed, what about a curvy decorative garden bed, what about some swales, what about and so like we can make better decisions if we do it from the love instead of fear. So think about that, and I think that's probably the most important part of what I'm trying to say here. And yeah, let's garden, let's grow together. I think it's about all I gotta say.